Welcome, listeners, to the true iteration of That's a Good Card. Today, Kyle will have the challenge of getting me to say, "That's a good card." While Kyle will be doing the convincing, I'll be playing the devil's advocate. Also, make sure you stay tuned for your favorite segment, "That's a Good Card?" And before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe down below. It helps us out a lot and it shows us that we're heading in the right direction. So please, please, please hit us with a like and a subscribe. All right, Kyle, let's get started.
Yeah, awesome. I am super excited for today's episode. It was actually brought to us by a good friend that we made through Discord, StemGod14. So I got the pleasure of playing a tournament with StemGod over this past month, and he brought this card up to me and said, you know, this is a good card to take a look at and definitely worth considering in your 99. So the card we're looking at today is Legolas's Quick Reflexes. Now, this card has already started to see some play. Many people just call it LQR for short, so I'll probably be using that as well, just because I'm not going to say Legolas's Quick Reflexes over and over again and mess up the pronunciation 50 times in a row. Anyway, but yeah, just want to start off by describing what it is. So Legolas's Quick Reflexes is a one-cost card. It just costs a singular green mana pip. It's an instant with Split Second. Which Split Second says, as long as the spell is on the stack, players can't cast spells or activate abilities that aren't mana abilities. The rest of the text reads, untap target creature. Until the end of turn, it gains hexproof, reach, and whenever this creature becomes tapped, it deals damage equal to its power to up to one target creature. Another note about this card before we start getting into it is it's just got awesome art.
It's so
I
good.
love the Lord of the Rings set. For those of you who haven't seen this card before, please look it up. It's like this full art, beautiful green image of Legolas standing on one foot, about to headshot an orc with a bow and arrow.
Even the orc is impressed. There's an orc in the background and it's impressed. It's like it has a face of awe. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's an awesome card. It's awesome art. The one thing I will say, I'll kind of break many of this glass in your mind of considering this a perfect card. Unfortunately, there's a punctuation error in the card, and I absolutely hate it. So Legolas so it's Tolkien in the books when he writes Legolas, like possessive Legolas something, it's just Legolas apostrophe at the end, right? Yeah. So when Wizards printed this as Legolas's, I think it bothered a lot of people. So I'm not sure if you noticed that, but now you're going to notice it literally every time you look at the card. So sorry, listeners. Sorry, listeners, but that's the only reason this card isn't perfect. Anyway, I just wanted to start off by kind of talking about how much this card has seen play or how prevalent this card is, because a lot of times we bring up cards that are maybe super fringe versus semi-fringe versus kind of seen play. This card is definitely one of the better cards that we've reviewed so far. I would put it up there with Stern Scolding as a card that has been seeing a good amount of play.
Yep.
And I went and did some digging into recent tournaments for lists that performed in the top 4 that had LQR in them. I think I sorted by larger tournaments. I'm not sure if I did 64 or what exactly I did, but I definitely cut out all the really small tournaments. And it looked like about half of the really high-performing CEDH decks run this card, which I thought was super interesting. The middling CEDH decks that maybe made top 16 and not top 4, notably, a lot of them didn't run this card. So in my head, I was like, maybe that's a little interesting. Maybe it's not a pilot diff, maybe it's a LQR diff right there.
Yep.
But other than CEDH, it was seen in a couple of top 16 Najeela lists. I don't think I saw it in any of the higher performing than top 16 Najeela lists, but it did see some play in those. And also shout out to a Yasharn deck I saw made, I think 17th place.
Hey, that's not bad.
That ran this card. Yeah, it ran LQR. So shout out the Yasharn player. I hope we make top 16 or top 4 or win it all next time. So this card has seen play, for sure. I think the convincing that I'll have to do in this podcast is that it belongs in decks outside of CEDH and maybe Najeela, just because we've already seen success for those decks. So I'm thinking for decks like Corvold, Atali, Atraxa, some other green decks that play. I think it's better with decks that run dorks and bigger creatures, but anything that wants to untap things or protect things, I think that this card is kind of a jack of all trades. So let's get into my first point. which is that Split Second is just OP. Split Second is an incredibly powerful ability in Magic the Gathering. So once again, I can read Split Second for the listeners who don't know exactly what it is. It says, as long as this spell is on the stack, players can't cast spells or activate abilities that aren't mana abilities. So basically, there's nothing you can really do once somebody casts LQR. The only thing that you can do is take a special game action. So for example, you can unmorph a card or use a morph action. There's a card called Stratus Dancer, which is a special morph action that actually counters LQR, which is really funny, but I don't think you're going to see a lot of that in CEDH.
Well, actually, there might be a little bit, only because I think which set was it? They introduced a bunch of face down, where you're cloaking cards.
Face down stuff.
Face down stuff.
Yeah. It could be relevant in a later meta for sure, but just note that Split Second basically means that it can't be interacted with. Overall, this is really not going to be interacted with very often.
For sure.
So once you cast LQR, it's going off, which is awesome. So the consistency of Split Second is my first point, and I'm going to be running through these points pretty quick because I got a lot of points for this card. It's a great card. Yeah. So not only is that a good card, it's a great card. So my second point is it's just one green pip. So that's exactly what you want in your instant spell. If it's not a free spell, you want it to be just one cost, right? So it's perfect for turbo lists. You're not going to flip into this card, and it's not going to hurt you very much. And it's at its base form, you're giving something hexproof. You're protecting one of your creatures for a green pip. I think that's a fair price. My third point, that the untap ability is something that is really underrated. So the fact that this card untaps, it does a lot of different things. So the first thing that makes it pretty relevant is that it actually can untap your mana dorks. So especially if you have mana dorks that create multiple amounts of mana. So let's say for a Bloom Tender, for example, right? So if you can tap your Bloom Tender for 3 mana, cast LQR on your Bloom Tender, it will untap, and actually, funny enough, even though it has Split Second, you can still tap it again
because it's a mana ability.
Because it's a mana ability. Exactly. Yep. So you can guarantee that you're getting that mana. So your Bloom Tender, all of a sudden with this card, it's just like a ritual, right? Yep. So it's like a dork ritual combined. So that's super important. Also, the untapping is relevant for some gotcha moments. When, let's say, you have a big creature that's tapped and somebody swings into you with maybe a valuable creature, right? Let's say I'm playing my Corvold, and my Corvold is a 10/10, and it's tapped, and somebody, Italian, decides to fly over at me and hit me for 3 damage. Well, now all of a sudden I can untap my Corvold
for sure,
and block the Italian as a removal, right? My fourth point is that it's removal, or it can be used as removal. So another blade on the Swiss Army knife is you can cast it before you go to combat with a creature or before you activate an ability on the creature, and then all of a sudden you have points of damage that you can point at anything that you want to be removed, right? If you have any green creature that has a little bit of power on it, you can remove stacks pieces. You can remove a Collector Oof with it. You can remove a Drannith Magistrate. You can remove a Rule of Law effect on a body, whether it's, Eidolon Rhetoric or Aethersworn Canonist, whatever, right? So it can be used as removal as well, right? The next point I'll make is that it's a great politicking tool. So this card can be used on your opponent's creatures as well, right? So let's say it's not you getting attacked by Italian. You can point it, an example to give that actually Stem God gave to me, shout out Stem God, is he said, there's a lot of situations where you'll see someone will have a tapped Crom, right? And a Najeela player will swing into the tapped Crom, and you can untap Crom with LQR to kill Najeela, right? And this is something that the other player is going to say, yeah, sure, too, right? Why not remove someone's really important piece? Same thing goes for like an Atraxa or something else that's huge, like a Tivit. Like, you can really ruin someone's day by having them swing, and the other person is like, oh, I effed up. Like, oh no. Oh no. Because now all of a sudden there's something that can block you, right? Yep. Not only that, it does give them, for example, if you put it on someone else's mana dork, they can tap the dork and deal damage with it.
Yep.
Right? So you could work with another person at the table to ping an Orcish Bowmaster with a freaking Llanowar elf, right? Like if that's what floats your boat, that's what floats your boat, you know?
Yep.
So it can definitely be used as a politicking tool at the table. And the last point I want to make that was also brought up to me by our good friend StemGod14 was that it has great synergy with Agatha's Soul Cauldron, which is a super prevalent card in this meta that we're in right now, where all of a sudden you can get tappable abilities on cards that normally don't tap, right? So for example, you can, with Agatha's Soul Cauldron, you can give like a huge orc army the ability to tap and deal 18 damage to a creature.
That's pretty cool.
Right?
Yep.
Because now with Agatha's Soul Cauldron, you can find whatever ability, that a tappable ability in a graveyard, and all of a sudden this big creature can tap now. So I really like the synergy with that card. If you're running a green deck that runs Agatha's Soul Cauldron, I feel like this card just kind of seamlessly fits into that.
Yeah, for sure.
Those are my points, y'all.
That's a lot. Like, there's a lot loaded onto this card, right? Like, there's a lot loaded onto this card.
We could probably do a 2-hour pod on this one.
And I'll be honest with you. I'm definitely trying to play devil's advocate here, and so it's one of those cards that it's like there's so much going on that it does seem just such like a godly card. And when I took a look real fast while you were talking, again, I just quickly did a quick search of Moxfield for CEDH decks that are running Legolas's quick reflexes. LQR. 457 decks are running it. But I'm going to try my best here. I think one of the big downsides of this card is, even though it has all of this stuff, to me, it's kind of a okay card. That's right. I said it.
Okay.
It's like an okay card.
Yeah.
Like it does
elaborate.
It does a lot, but I don't know if it does like quite enough for me, right? Like, it's only just protection. When I compare it to a card that it is very similar to, I think, Veil of Summer, right? And what I think I like more about Veil of Summer over this card is Veil of Summer replaces itself, right? Yes, it doesn't have split second, doesn't make something. It does make something hexproof. In fact, it makes like everything and all of your spells hexproof.
Yeah.
Till the end of turn. No, it doesn't remove anything per se, but at the same time, it kind of gives more. It veils things more, right? It kind of gives more protection than than LQR.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that fact of. I think you could argue. I mean, both Veils, Veil of Summer and Veil of Autumn, from a protection standpoint, are strictly better than LQR. Just because protecting the cards that you're going to cast, protecting your win con, that generally does hold a higher standard than protecting a creature on board. I get that.
And so, like, in decks that I would kind of run those two cards, right? Like either Veil of Summer or I think, is it Veil of Autumn or Autumn's Veil?
Autumn's Veil.
Autumn's Veil. I find myself like I wouldn't cut either one of those cards. I would maybe cut Autumn's Veil, but I don't actually.
Yeah, it doesn't draw a card.
Run Autumn's Veil in anything. I do run a Veil of Summer, I think, in Najeela, and so I'm not sure like what other cards I would cut for it. And so I kind of found myself when I was looking at this card as it's kind of like my 101st card, right? It's like that card where it gets really high on my list. But when I look at, especially with Najeela, and it's so full of like good cards, right? Like Najeela is like a no bads card commander. Like, what do I cut from Najeela? And I know that you mentioned that Najeela does run this card, and I would be happy to experiment in it. But I don't find myself wanting to protect potentially Najeela that often, to be honest with you, because part of Najeela's game plan is like being so great to pivot, and so I find myself like kind of struggling to find where I would put this card.
Yeah, does Najeela run Bloom Tender in most lists? I've never played Najeela.
I do not.
Actually, that's a lie. I played Najeela once and I won.
I personally do not. I think I run 2, maybe 3 mana dorks, and it's both of the hierarchs, like ignoble and noble hierarch. Personally.
Because I think, I think that the stock on this card definitely goes up if you run Agatha's, and the stock on this card definitely goes up if you run Bloom Tender or any dork that taps for a lot of mana.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I do see a lot of value in this card in mono green, right? Like in a Selvala, maybe a Yisan, like cards where you're kind of wanting more quality cards, this is definitely going to make that cut.
Yeah, and you want to protect your Ashaya or your big card that's going to, your big combo dude.
And I think part of the reason you see it in Sisei is because Sisei is running like Selvala. It is running cards where big dorks or like mana enablers in general. I think that to go back to the very beginning when you were kind of talking about different like decks, it did see, so there is like this post on Reddit that happens every like month or so for like the hot cards of like where things that go up and down. It's using an old database, but I thought it was pretty interesting. This card has seen play in 14 more decks than it did in the previous month. It is now ranked 287 out of like, I'm not even sure how many, but it's like now like it's on a rank, right? Compared to my card that I brought up last time from the last episode.
Yeah, there's got to be a couple thousand.
Right. Whereas like Veil of Summer is ranked 70th, and that's ranked 70th, even though it's seeing play in 31 less decks overall, right? Of all the decks that could run it, 31 decks are running it less.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those cards. My main point for it is like, it's really good. It does so much, but at the same time, it doesn't do quite enough for me, and maybe it's because I don't always run like that. I would consider it in Kinnan, but again, Kinnan has so many good cards that I don't know exactly what I would cut for this card, right? Like it is there are some flex spots I'm definitely going to try around with it, because like there are times where Kinnan is definitely getting targeted quite a bit.
Heavy.
Heavy.
That is true. People have caught on. People have been hurt by Kinnan too many times now. I'm seeing Kinnans get swords. I'm seeing Kinnans get slaughter packed. Like I'm seeing Kinnan draw some heat at the table. That's for sure.
But like I said, like it's gonna be kind of hard to kind of figure out where I want to cut it. And
yeah,
honestly, that's kind of it, because this card is kind of bonkers.
Yeah. I think. What you mentioned it pretty much rings true, and unfortunately, it's the blight of a lot of green cards. It's just if you're able to run other colors that have cantripy type cards or just like utility cards, like not necessarily cards that are a combo piece or going to be your win condition, you're probably going to find better cards or higher quality quality in the different colors, right? Yeah. It's pretty tough. I do think Veil of Summer is an incredible card, and I think that 5-color decks should be running it. I think that's one of those like green cards that really stands out, right? Yeah. Also, Bop, shout out Bop.
Huge. Big deal.
It's been a mainstay forever, Hall of Famer. But yeah, that's a Hall of Famer for sure. But yeah, I think to add to your downsides, since it's something we didn't touch, we've kind of moseyed around it a little bit. It isn't a card that wins you the game, right? Just plain and simple. This card is not a combo piece. It is not direct protection to your win. Like maybe I'll say anything that untaps technically can probably be part of some convoluted combo. It's not part of any consistent CEDH meta combos that we're seeing right now.
Correct. I'm
sure you can find. I'm sure somebody can
for
sure. some freaking
much smarter people than us.
5-card combo with LQ. Yeah, exactly. Some 5-card 12-cost combo that goes infinite with LQR. Sure, whatever. But anyway, it's just not that piece, and I think that when you're building a deck, especially one that has 5 colors, and you're really scrounging and fighting for every slot in the deck list, it's easy to cut a card like this. LQR kind of falls into that range of like it's in everybody's sideboards. Like I would love to know the numbers. If you could see, can you search on Moxfield to see how many sideboards this deck is in? You can? Actually. Oh, I would love that stat. This shit's probably in 1 million sideboards.
In just CEDH? Is it only in 29 sideboards? But it's in 457 decks.
And this is, for our listeners, this is also just Moxfield deck lists that have been tagged as CEDH, which is super not consistent.
Probably not
because I don't think a lot of the community does. So, but it is interesting to think about. So it is in sideboards.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, cool. Those are kind of like the downsides. So I think the best point you made for me here is it kind of finds itself being a fringe card in a lot of the really high power deck lists, right? Like, sure, in Kinnan, this could be an awesome card because it can protect some of those massive pieces like Void Winner or Seedboard Muse. But at the end of the day, that list is so tight on cards. Like, it's such an efficient list already that adding something that doesn't necessarily bring you the win directly, like isn't a direct win con piece, it's tough to do. Same goes with the partnership like Thrasios decks. Like they run so many awesome cards that are helping them win the game fast. And even if they're playing a mid-range style, those Thrasios partner decks, like Thrasios Tymna, they don't necessarily run like these big creatures that they're wanting to protect. A lot of them run dork packages, which is great, but you're not going to get as much value as you can with, running a bigger creature that can take care of a Crom or can take care of a Talion or can take care of a Niv or a Tivit even if you have something huge. You never know, right? So I think that the ceiling for this card definitely scales upward, whether or not you're running larger creatures to protect.
Yeah, for sure.
So, y'all, what point did I make that stands out to you the most?
Split second.
Of why I think.
Fucking split second, man.
Before I even end my statement, you're like, split second
is
nuts.
Really nuts, right? Like, I have definitely seen this card play. And I'm like I said earlier, like, I'm not sure if I'm high on this card or not, like, but I'm not, like, opposed to it at all. I'm just, again, always kind of caught in terms of, like, it's 101st, right, on my list, right? I'm like brewing a deck, or I'm putting a deck together, and then like I'm looking at it, and it's like I find it like it would be at the 101st spot because it is good. It's
cut a land.
It's a good, yes. Always cut a land.
Public service announcement: do not do that.
Please don't do that.
That was a joke. That was sarcasm.
But at the same time, like it does do things really well, and
it does a lot of things. It's a wall of text. That's what we like to talk about in CEDH cards, right? Yeah, you always say we're looking for those walls of text.
But like if I look for protection, I go to Veil of Summer first, right? And so it's rare that I kind of want two pieces of protection like that. Maybe, yeah, definitely I can. But
yeah,
when I'm playing in those kind of colors, I have counter spells already, right? And so if I've kind of blown through all of that, then the game wasn't really meant for me anyways, I feel like. And maybe I needed LKR to kind of like go, nope, you can't add anything else to the stack. This card is just going to end that. Yep. And now this card is protected with hexproof, and maybe I need to try it out. And like I said, I'm going to try this out, and I'm happy to be wrong about this card for sure.
Because it's a Swiss Army knife, it does, I would say, 3 or 4 things pretty good. And a lot of times you're looking for a card that does one thing really, 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 really well, like the best. But it's a Swiss Army knife, jack of all trades card. I'm liking it. So, is Legolas's Quick Reflexes a good card?
Yeah, I think so. I do think so. I think it's a good card. I think it is.
For sure.
I think it's a good card. I think it is going to take a little bit of time for me to kind of like get my head wrapped around it. It might just take being able to play it like a couple times for me to really fully get behind this card.
Yeah. And is there a deck list that you would say you think should try this for sure? I know I named a few of them, not counting Sisay or Nagila, just because those have seen a lot of play with it. Is there any other deck that you would say like, hey, you specifically try LQR?
I mean, I would imagine every Selvala player already has this running in it. I actually don't know Atraxa. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think Atraxa would like it. I think I definitely agree with you that Atraxa should probably think about this, especially since Atraxa's a kill on site commander.
Dargo maybe would play this. I actually don't know if we have a player in our pod that runs Thrasios Dargo. I'm not sure if his list runs it or not. So I'd be curious in seeing it. Like I said, for Stem God alone, I'm gonna be test running this card, and I'm happy to eat my own words.
All right, awesome. We did it, everybody. Legolas's Quick Reflexes, LQR, that's a good card. You heard it here, folks. For many of you, all the Sisay players are going, duh, in the chat. But, let us know if there's any of the lists that we didn't mention.
Yeah, for sure.
That you play LQR in, that you're like, this card absolutely slaps in this deck. It's incredible. Let us know in the comments below. And with that...
It's time. Is it time?
Let's move on. It is time for our closing segment that we love so much. That's a good card, question mark? All right, so for those of you who haven't joined us before for our That's a Good Card, question mark segment, what we're going to do is I'm going to provide Ya with the name of an obscure Magic card that hopefully Ya's never heard of before, and he's going to try his best to guess all the card's details. We're talking mana cost, we're talking the artwork, the flavor text, everything that has to do with this card. Ya's going to put on his Wizards of the Coast thinking cap and attempt to paint us a picture. All right? And don't forget to pause the video after I name the card so you can play along with Ya and see what you got right, what you didn't get right. All right, yeah. Are you ready for your card? All right. Today's card is Rustmouth Ogre.
Rustmouth Ogre? Definitely a red card.
Rustmouth Ogre.
Definitely a red card. I think it is gonna be a big boy.
Yeah, let's paint a picture. You're thinking of the Rustmouth Ogre.
I think.
What are you imagining?
I see an ogre sitting in a den, surrounded by treasure that is old.
Oh, treasure! It's a treasure ogre.
Old.
Okay.
It's old. And it's got a dumb look on
Okay.
its face, and maybe some drool hanging out of it, right? Like, and it's got
Rude, but okay.
it's got just a mishmash of armor wearing on it, like over like kind of like a mostly naked upper body.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
Rustmouth
Yeah.
Ogre. It's kind of a big boy.
A little bit of nudity in the Rustmouth Ogre artwork.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say Rustmouth costs. It's a creature for sure. I think it's actually, I'm gonna even go say it's an artifact creature. Artifact creature.
Ooh, okay.
Artifact creature.
But it's a red artifact
Yeah,
creature. Are we
red
doing this
artifact
again?
creature.
Is this Dragon Engine 2.0?
Ogre, right? Ogre. Artifact creature.
Creature ogre. Yep. Artifact creature ogre.
It's gonna cost something like, let's say, like I'm gonna say 2 generic and 2 red.
Okay, 4 costs. 2 generic, 2 red.
It's gonna be like a 4/5. Because ogre. Because
Okay.
ogre.
So it's got a big
It's got
booty.
a big booty. I'm gonna go a little simple on this one. I don't know if it has any abilities.
So there's no abilities. It's a 4/5 for 4. No abilities.
No abilities. I like just generic as Richard Garfield.
It's a salt of the
intended,
earth. Yeah.
like
It's a salt of the earth
like
ogre.
it's like trying to be Savannah Lions. Throw that one up there for all of our listeners, right? It's like a true classic magic card
Just a big booty magic card.
with like flavor text, right? Because like it has no abilities,
yeah.
so it's got like flavor text like the ogre sits in its dungeon waiting for hapless adventurers to cross its path.
Wow. That was kind of poetic. Yeah, first you give us haikus, now you're giving us this like poetry about this half-naked ogre. And to be honest, yeah, you did an incredible
That's
job
right, buddy.
today. You absolutely crushed it. I'm not gonna lie, your description of the artwork is like spot on. I was like, what the fuck? Is he looking at this card? I thought you were actually trolling me. I thought you had looked it up. You've never heard of this card before. Yeah, you've never heard of this card before.
Never.
Holy
Absolutely
shit.
no. Who
Okay.
has? Who
So
has?
Rustmouth or ogre, the artwork is literally an ogre wearing like a mishmashed amalgamation of armor, like you said, half naked,
Holy crap.
and he's like he's drooling,
Holy crap.
like you said. He's got his mouth open and he's like eating some metal, like a metal staff. Honestly, that staff kind of looks like Staff of Domination. I'm wondering if that's Staff of
that
Domination.
actually might be.
Yeah. So you absolutely 10 out of 10, 50 internet points for getting the artwork of Rustmouth Ogre. Just chef's kiss. Absolutely perfect. You might be Brian Snoddy, who apparently is the artwork.
All right.
Who did the artwork for this. It might be you. That might be your pseudonym. But unfortunately, this card costs 6.
Oh, jeez.
So it's 4 colorless, 2 red
Okay.
pips. It is a red card, like you said. It is a creature ogre. I think you started finessing yourself by saying it was an artifact.
yeah.
You got to go with your gut.
Yeah.
You got to go with your gut. It's just a creature ogre. Unfortunately, you said it was a 4/5. It's a 5/4. Oh, got those swapped.
I do have number dyslexia, so I'm going to give myself half points. I'm going to give myself half points on that.
Half points. We'll get half credit. Half credit. Awesome. And it does unfortunately have an ability. It's not
Overpowered.
Just a
Overpowered.
simple. It's OP.
It's OP.
Yeah. Obviously for 6 mana, it's not a 5/4 for 6. Okay. So the ability on the card says whenever Rustmouth Ogre deals combat damage to a player, you may destroy target artifact that player controls.
Oh, okay. I see. Okay.
Artifact destruction ogre.
For 6? Oh my god.
Yeah. And it does have some flavor text. You ready for this?
Yeah, I'm ready.
I thought yours was wonderful. This one does scratch my itch that I very much enjoy, which is a comedic flavor text.
Yeah.
It says, "It has an iron stomach." Literally. I'm gonna give that a 9.5
That's
out of 10.
actually really good.
It's literally a picture of the ogre eating a piece of metal, and it says it has an iron stomach.
I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, no, that was incredible artwork description, just to a T. The drool, the slight nudity, the mismatched
you can just
armor.
take the original art and slap that on, because that's kind of what I just described.
Incredible. All right, y'all. Thanks for listening. We had a blast talking about LQR, Legolas's Quick Reflexes. Please go ahead and remember to like and subscribe down below on the video if you haven't already.
Helps.
Yeah, it helps a lot. Only I think it's less than 10% of our viewers are subscribed. So please go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you can get notifications for the videos that we release. We're going to be releasing every Monday, as well as a sprinkle of videos on Thursdays when we're able to make extra content. Jan and I work full time, so this is just our passion project. We love talking CEDH, we love talking Magic, and we would love your support. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for listening today, and we will see you next episode.